So talk about the flood.
I have no. We know about. I've talked about. Well, one thing is very interesting about the flood is just before the flood. Now I'm bypassing your question to
Fair
talk just before the flood. Why does God bring on the flood? Because the world. I'm almost certain it's chapter 10, but I'm not sure it's chapter 10.
Chapter 6.
It's chapter. Well, it's where it's Exodus.
No, the flood is Genesis chapter 6.
Okay.
And you're looking for verse 5. It says, Rabba ra'at ha'adam ba'aretz, great was the evil of man on the earth. V'chol yetzer machshavot libo, and all the yetzer of the thought of his heart was only evil all day long.
Okay.
That's chapter 6, verse 5.
Okay, I'm going a bit further than that. Then, when does it say the flood's going to come? I've got the wrong glasses on here.
So that is, well, I mean, technically you could say it says it in the previous
wait a second. Let me just
few
keep
verses.
further here because
in 6:3 it says, "My soul will not remain from man."
When the world was full with violence.
Yeah.
Where does it say that?
So you're looking for verse 11.
What chapter?
But chapter 6, verse 11 says, "Vatishachet ha'aretz lifnei ha'Elohim, vatimeleh ha'aretz chamas."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So tell your readers about. Or maybe you did already. Have you told them?
Well, I'm gonna do a separate discussion on that, but please, you share your. So the word for violence there is Hamas.
Yeah.
Hamas is
the readers realize it's literally Hamas, and we read that on the day when Hamas attacked our people on October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
That was the portion that we read in the synagogue that day. It's like it's frightening. And it says, and the word there for you're going to do a section on, so I don't preempt it. Just
no, please go ahead. Share
every
your
place
thoughts.
that says violence, the Hebrew text there is. I'm going to make here's my glasses.
Is Hamas.
Is Hamas. And at the end of this, it says, and God says that Hamas must be destroyed, that the violence must be destroyed. And the word violence, your readers, you'll hear from Nehemia in more detail, but the word for violence is Hamas. It's not like changing the transliteration. That's what the Hebrew it says, and that's how you pronounce it. It's the exact same sounding word. Now, Hamas for the Arabs, it's abbreviations of several things, but no one knows. I doubt if the person listening to them that knows but everyone calls it Hamas, and the UN calls it Hamas, and the American president calls it Hamas, and everyone calls it Hamas, because it is Hamas, the world. And in the Middle East here, we call it Hamas. And if we read it in the synagogue that day.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it's prophetic.
Yeah.
And maybe not almost.
Yeah, it was, because we tore the country apart politically, and God says, you want to tear it apart? Run the system yourself. And God stepped back. The attack was coming. The result. This is now Jerry Schroeder. Okay, the attack was going to happen. You don't build 500 kilometers worth of 500 of tunnels, and you have weapons, and you have machines that can fly in the air that can carry people. It was all happening. That wasn't what brought on the attack. I mean, our being separated, but the fact that we were torn politically, people may not realize, but our country was torn politically into two camps as whether we should reform our Supreme Court. It wasn't getting rid of democracy. That's what the people against reform were. So though they're trying to destroy democracy, it's not true. In my opinion, we're trying to make sure democracy is balanced. Our Supreme Court is the strongest Supreme Court in the world. It has power that no other Supreme Court has. And they're not elected officials. They're appointed by themselves. It's not like, I just plead for one thing, make it like the American system where each new justice is vetted. It may be brutal. I mean, we listen to, some of these vettings on the American TV that gets here. It's almost brutal, but it keeps the Supreme Court honest. Not just honest, but how should I say, directed to what it's supposed to do. We don't have that here. So it's a problem. I'm not going to get into it. I never took part in the
Aharon Barak was once described by an American judge as I think they called him a judicial buccaneer, buccaneer in the sense of a pirate.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but anyway, that's a whole separate issue.
Yeah, I just want to say, what the result of the attack was,
Yeah.
the attack was coming, but the disaster of the attack was because God stepped back and said, "You want to tear your country apart? I'll help you get it back together." Because the entire password of this war is in Hebrew yachad, togetherness. I've been with the IDF. I don't want to get into my history with the, but I was part of it. I'm an old guy now, but we never had the byword, we're together. Only this because we were torn apart, and it's so. But anyway, I don't want to get into the politics, but it's so sad. And okay, let's leave that aside. But
and I would just say as a side point that I don't think it's just a coincidence that Hamas is called Hamas. When they formed their organization, these were people who had some knowledge of Hebrew and Israeli culture. And I think they chose that word very deliberately, right? It is an acronym in Arabic for the Islamic resistance movement, but it couldn't have been lost on them, the significance of this word in Hebrew as well. And by the way, in Arabic, it has a meaning, which is intensity in war and religion, right? Basically, it's being a zealot. That's what Hamas means in Arabic. It's hard to believe that they weren't aware of it. Look, Yahya Sinwar, who now is the leader, he wasn't before. He speaks fluent Hebrew. What was different between Hamas and the PLO is Arafat was born in Egypt, didn't know the first thing about Israel, didn't know the first thing about Palestine. Hamas is different. They grew up in under Israeli rule. They were formed under Israeli rule. They had served times in Israeli prisons before they broke off and formed their Islamist movement.
We cured him of some kind of disease.
Yeah, he had a heart disease that Israel cured him of. Well, he's not the founder, but the point is the founders back in the 80s, they were, a lot of them were very well versed in Israeli culture and the Hebrew language. But so let's get back to the flood. So
I don't have an answer for the flood.
Fair enough. Okay.
I have no, and I used to teach until a few years ago. I taught for 25 years at a what's called a yeshiva, a place where you come to study about God. You study, and I taught science and Bible there.
Okay.
And for a few years running, about 3 years running, all the teachers got together, closed the doors, and we tried to figure out the flood. We did that for 3 years running. We never got an answer of how you can show in the world that there was a flood. I do not know from my studies, which doesn't mean I know I want to make it very clear. My earth science wasn't focused on trying to find a flood. I have earth science and nuclear physics, two majors. But I don't think there are strong, I don't know of data that are strongly pointing in favor of the flood. Now, other persons may have, and I'm saying I haven't studied by 1%, let us know anything of the information. However, I can say explicitly, the flood could not have changed radioactive decay chains. Okay, that temperature, no matter how hot you get water, the temperatures that change nuclear reactions occur in atomic bombs. Those are the temperatures that you require. Obviously, there's nothing left.
Look, to me, the easiest explanation is that the word for Eretz, which we translate usually as earth, could also mean land, right? Meaning, so there could have been a regional flood that flooded, parts of Mesopotamia, or the Black Sea is one of the popular theories these days. I'm not saying that's the answer. Maybe Kent Hovind is right, and the world's only 6,000 literal years old, and all the fossils in the world are explained by that, right? I don't know. I'm not an expert.
That couldn't change the
flood. I'm saying I don't know. So you're saying though there were fossils before the flood?
Oh, sure. The fossils from before the flood have show a strata layer that you can guess ages of, and a radioactive age that matches the strata layer that would
Mhm.
if there had been a flood, they would have been changed, and they were pre-flood. Put it this way: the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age fossils are good ones. They
So,
pre-flood.
so dinosaurs weren't walking around with humans.
No, dinosaurs die about 30 or 40 million years ago. Dinosaurs are way before their people. Would you say
Okay.
were or were not?
What I say?
No,
I mean,
you,
so this gentleman who I interviewed, he argued that there were dinosaurs on the flood on the ark. That Noah built a really big boat, the
no,
ark, and there were
no,
dinosaurs on the ark.
dinosaurs disappear. We know the number is quite strongly confirmed by now the last 40 years, the impact in the northern part of the Caribbean off the is it Yucatan?
Chicxulub or something like that. I can never
That,
pronounce it.
yeah.
Okay, so
That dates to the time when and that date is around the whole world.